Chili here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and let's talk about Uranus in Cancer while I'm fixing my room. Now you probably are asking, Chili, why on earth Uranus in Cancer? Uranus is in Gemini. You prompted us for 3 years about Uranus in Gemini. Uranus said now, it is a Saturday, so usually you talk about, I don't know, Dene Balgiri. Why Uranus in Cancer? And my answer is very simple. Saturn Day is a time for preparation, rest and preparation. And when we think about preparation in astrology, we're thinking about the notion that we want to take a look at what will a trajectory be like for the next decades. One of the greatest ways to do that is to think about Pluto in Aquarius as preparing us for Pluto in Pisces. Okay, we rejuvenate everything that is set in stone before what? The flood. Do you not see how Netherlands is trying to change the approach of how to deal with the North Sea? Because it's about to get flooded again. But it already is flooded, but to the levels that are unprecedented, and they're changing the way that they have been thinking about dams in the past centuries. So while I'm excitedly following these changes, I'm also observing at the mess in my room. So I have a fourth house ruler in Eris, which means to light a candle can assist in shifting the energy. And then I have to make sure I rest enough, and I have to make sure I drink enough. Again, the water bearer. So yesterday I shifted everything about my bed and mattress. I made new candles. And today I'm taking a look at kind of like the outer mess. I noticed how the process created a barrier of mess between me and my parent. And then suddenly there was a Denebalgadi picture in between. And I had to tell my parent how's the car doing, because they would need to go into that room to see how the car is doing. It's an old car, so it's not like we have a Volvo in the garage or anything like that, or a garage. But that created a permeation of a boundary that I, by the way, saw in another house that was hosting me in between houses. And indeed, the relations between the mother and the child were such that the mother find it difficult to get a hold of the child. And I'm like, well, the architecture of the house is permeating the child's boundaries, even when they try to sleep outside of the parent's bed. So either they would go back to the phase of sleeping, wanting to sleep at the same bed with the parent, because they're children, or they would become very agitated and nervous because the next phase of the individuation is not allowed. Now that I know about what they do to children, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of rituals that affect the relations between people in the family, or that make each person be harassed by the uploaded consciousness of another person. Which is a way to get people dehoused. But I was also looking at the infrastructure and how there was difficulty to get that child to behave civil. A child cannot behave civil when their space is permeated. So this is also for new parents. If you're building a house, if you're building, if you have a newborn, I want you to try to think. I want you to activate your thinking faculties, your planning faculties, because a lot of the housing is those things deactivated. People either not believing that they can have a house, um, not really their boundaries being permeated, so they seek more traveling. And now, sometimes those trajectories are okay. Sometimes the person is kind of like, they're outgrowing being at home and they want to go to travel. Then they go to travel and they find a job and then they go and register to a university. It was one Uranus square, or Uranus or Saturn return when Saturn was squaring Uranus, of that I actually saw happening in the lives of people that came to me for a reading. Is the combination of taking responsibility and growing up and settling down and then traveling, or traveling just to liberate oneself from the routine and then taking on a first degree. Saturn sextile Uranus has a little bit more of um, agreement or harmony between rebellion and maturation, or creating or rejuvenating the structures in our lives. So for me, I found having a candle burning already gets me into the mode where I begin to have my own, because Eris is our own way, our own house, our own, us doing it for ourselves. And this is also for parents that have children with Eris in the fourth house, or parents that have Eris in the fourth house. A lot of y'all gonna have to allow your children to make a house for themselves. I think about rural villages in Uganda. At around 12, the community would help the child to build a house outside the parents' house. No, they wouldn't marry, but also it coincides with the autonomy, particularly in puberty. Now, people that have children, or people that have Aries fourth house, or ruler of the fourth house in Aries, so moon in Aries, you're gonna have to allow your children to have their way, their house, their structure. They can make mistakes. Sometimes it can drive you mad, but it's their friction. If that friction is not allowed, individuation is not allowed, and then we begin to have relational traumas and personality abnormalities. Note at how many things do I mention before I go to Uranus in Cancer. There are a lot of perceptions that have to do at home. For people to be able to respect themselves, let's say, wear the nice garment, um, take care of the hygiene, the structure of the relations and the infrastructure of the house need to support that. Do they have a place where they can put on the makeup? Do they find it more difficult to sit, let's say, on a chair? Amazing. Do they have a place where they can have a garment on the floor and they can do their makeup? Is there mirrors stuffed in their bedroom? It's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be a different room. Now you're gonna tell me, but Shirley, we're not aristocrats. Well, and you won't be if you won't think about the space and understand that, let's say, even if that space is missing, acknowledge that it is missing, rather than saying, oh, we can do with a one room apartment and feel great. I was there in COVID. And by the way, right now I'm also in a one room. Because the things that have to change have to change. They're now negotiable. I cannot rent a house without the entire industry of the real estate changing to accommodate for people that never been in a situation where people try to extort them, try to rape them, not even for rent. There is no point to move beyond that, but there is definitely a point to tend to the house that I do want. So I'm not forgetting my trajectory and let the word accommodate. Think about the parents that told to their children, how will anybody respect you if you don't respect yourself? In what household does this? Don't feel called out. You're not called out. It's a general thing. In what households is such a sentence even carrying validation? Because usually if you think about a child growing, let's say, I don't know, the mother is dressing a certain way, the children, boys and girls, will try to, I remember myself, there was a picture of me, a tiny toddler with the slippers of my mom. I just liked wearing the shoes of my mom. It was extremely risky. Then she had to, perhaps that taught her to move from the high-heeled ones that would spring her, would spring her. Then her daughter is wearing a Birkenstock or going barefoot in conferences. It's not a brand name. It's just it's who I am. Now, or if the father is busy building something, so daughter or son, they immediately want to see what they're doing, to do like them. If the father is building, let's say, a log cabin in a summer house, where's daddy? Daddy's at work. We want to go to see what he's doing. What he's doing is building a cabin. Amazing. We want to go there. Well, we're going to help dad build a cabin. Okay. Let's say mommy is wearing her makeup. Immediately, boys and girls, the children, the children want to wear the makeup as well. Mama is drinking coffee. The children want to have. I remember I was taking a walk in the city. And then there was a child that was already becoming addicted to coffee. And the mother smiles at me and she says, this child, she loves coffee so much. She see me drinking coffee, she see daddy drinking coffee, and she just loves coffee. This is also how parents begin to face the fact that they can teach their children whatever. The children will see what the parents do, and they will imitate. Now, if mommy is smoking a cigarette, if mommy is doing that, then it must be good. But let's say mom dresses well. Child also, naturally. Now, if mommy begins to, let's say the child dresses naturally, and then mommy begins to say, oh, no, no, let me fix this, let me fix that. She goes with their hands groping. It's like, no, no, no. Now they'll begin to, the individuation begins to shake up. It's like, you got to ask. And then the touch has to be tender. Now, a lot of women have this. Oh, I'm bothered by this. I'm bothered by that. That I don't like. That I don't like. They with this energy to get their hands on the clothes of the children, even though they think the children are beautiful. No, 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 no. They don't get slapped. They just get a child that stops dressing up. Let's say the father is fixing the car, fixing the cables, fixing the this, fixing the that. The child touches something, they're like, no, 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 don't touch that. It's supposed to be here. It's not supposed to be here. Now they get the child that's lost their engineering capacity. Now, this is also where the parents have to ask themselves how much of what they do, and none of us is exempt from that question, is something that we tend to when we're angry. It's kind of like we're angry. Oh, I'm so frustrated. I'm going to fix it right now. It's not a bad thinking. Oh, I have anger. Yesterday I received my moon days, so there's natural evacuation of the dirt, evacuation of what no longer serves. So every person usually has those things, and we have to check this because for us, when we do it for ourselves, we don't think much. We don't have witnesses, let's say, young witnesses, apprentice. Then we just do, we fix our, we don't think we usually do that. Or even a woman putting on a makeup, it's usually a self practice. Usually not a witness there. And not only that, it's a coping mechanism practice. Our elders are pissing us off. Okay, we're gonna do something ourselves. We're gonna how many songs do we have like freakum dress? He's been acting up. I'm gonna put that freakum dress. Like, wait a second. Now, it's not necessarily wrong, but it gives the dressing up an aggressive. Think about revenge looks or revenge makeup. And then there are daughters, there are witnesses there. They experience the violence. Okay, I'm not talking about beating the child. I'm not talking about anything like radically abusive. And you know what? I'm not even talking about microaggressions because usually it's not even directed at the child. Is that somebody's used to do something themselves as coping mechanism with themselves, and then there's a witness, and then they also do that. It's like, well, it's reasonable. They want to, but everything inside the self that was wounded since childhood raises up to the surface. Now take into account that there is so much pressure. I'm wearing a ring. Am I married? No. Why am I wearing the ring? Let me tell you. In the beginning, I thought to buy a ring as to have a good relationship with myself. I didn't buy a ring then. Then there were all kinds of attempts to forcibly match me with people. Then I bought a ring. Then there were attempts for me to take the ring off. Because neither in marriage or outside of marriage was there honoring of the erotic, non-erotic self, the child self, the adult self. There were all kinds of forced, like Black Mirror, where they try to force people into a certain structure that doesn't fit anyone. I had a little bit of a comment to Albina. She said, don't normalize cheating. It's not a bad thing to say, but for us to not normalize cheating, we should also not normalize trafficking. If people believe that there is such thing as, oh, that person is a slut, that person was violated, and either they have avoidance and they were raped, or they have perpetuation, which means that they are raped in a way of mind control. What they don't have is connection to the embodied self. Would they be monogamous if they were all embodied and well and no harm? I don't know. But at any rate, they would probably be less likely to cheat or to be the people that people blame in being the third party. Now, for the elite children, when they have rituals, when they have rites, when they have training, and some of this training they are dissociated from, an extortion cult can torture this person, torture that person, access the libidinal thing, the libidinal issue, to try to create either a match or a re-traumatization, and then extort money. I once wrote to a lady, I was in a conference and there were a lot of mind hacking, mind control, and whatnot. Then a person flirted with me and he had a girlfriend. In the beginning, I was attracted to this person, but I felt sick in my stomach. And I saw a profile of a single man in dating site. And I said, I get sick in my stomach, sick in my stomach. Then I write message, not to him, not to her, to both of them. And then I stopped being sick. I stopped thinking about this person. Everything. Did she write me a thank you note? No. Now, all of this happens now in a situation when such things happen are bubbling in the consciousness of society. People expect to be in happy relationships, in healthy homes. Now, Ketu going through Magha is addressing that from the Leo perspective. Uranus after Gemini is going to address it from the nuclear family perspective. Uranus in Cancer, I think both my parents have Uranus in Cancer. Either both or one of them. Uranus in Cancer is addressing the most core things about the family, about the people, the nation, care, mothering, but in a way where, let's just say, child can say, I think I am from this father that they were married to, but my younger brother, I don't know. And it seems like my mother likes that younger brother more. I see couples married not out of love. They don't get along. Then they try to stick together. The children suffer. Why not divorce? I see children born not out of love. Now they don't know to tell willing consent, withdrawn consent, tantric embodiment. That's something that only Uranus in Taurus was really accentuating. And it happened just up until a year ago. So in the last decade. So they say, well, the children born not out of love. It doesn't work. The child is unhappy. The parents are unhappy. So I'm just warning that we're going to have in less than a decade another Uranus in Cancer. Now I grew up to parents that have Uranus in Cancer. I grew up to this pattern. And now Uranus is transiting my 4th house anyway. And I'm at my parents' house, so I can see that Uranus in Cancer really accentuating strong. Moon Uranus aspects can also bring that. Because Uranus wants to liberate us so that the family, the mothering, the caring, the even caregiving. Think about welfare rehabilitation. They always try to get the person to have discipline. I saw a woman addicted to cocaine. She had discipline like military, and she was working. She needed the drugs to work in a regular job, not in. And then she had the discipline to try to get out of the drug. Everything was working against her. Now I know it's because probably she didn't want to do certain things that are horrible, so they tried to keep her at that. Now, so people get disciplined, they go out of jail, they're disciplined, and then what? They have to expose the corruption that got them to be in jail. People try to make the person adjust to society. But the reason that they were excluded is because society also needs to adjust. Okay, think about the situation of parents who were married not out of love, brought children not out of love. And then what happens to the children? Anything that was even trying to connect with sensuality that is healthy. Oh, this is horror, this is that, this is this is that. Nobody. I know a psychologist, male psychologist, that wrote a book about. He was the one that was a part of prohibiting relations between therapists and the patient. When he wrote his book, everybody was looking into him and saying, "Oh, this person, he must be pervert. He must be this. He must be that." Okay, all these old money advices. We never talk dirty about our family. Wait for Uranus in Cancer. It's not about yellow pages. It's about Uranus going through the nuclear family to transform the nuclear family, not into dogmatic. And it's also building up to be squaring Eris. Okay, Uranus conjoined Eris at the Me Too. So there is a lot to unfold, to unravel, to unpack. Now, usually, what would be? Let's say somebody is bothered. Oh, your little toe is to the inner of the leg. Fix that. Then you begin to fix that. You're like, oh, in holistic medicine, the so it is people that blame others for things that happen to them. But it is actually from lineages that where there were weddings at puberty or where there were infants that were harmed. And along the generations, I was also born when there was a nuclear leak or a nuclear So even holistic medicine did not actually see the full picture. It asked us to have choices when the wound was in a place that predated choice. Or a person could be saying, "Well, look at all this mess," and they get pissed off, and then they say, "Okay, let's try different methods to fix the room. Let's take a look holistically. What comes up in me when I try to fix the room? Anger, rage, frustration, chronic helplessness. Yes, of course, because if you fix that, and then the start was saying, and then I said, no, you want to fix my room. If you want to fix my room, then I should be able to pay you. But the working sector doesn't allow me to pay you. You want me to fix my room, then we're going to have to consider all these things that I say. And then let's say I take something and I move it around. And I say, oh, you see, you feel better. And I say, yes. You see, why can't we build like half-moon terraces in slopes of soil? Some of them will grow vegetation. That vegetation can be the walls of the residence even. And say, land, go buy land and see it. And you need it to protect the air, and you need it to protect the soil from the things that disturb the air. It's like, oh, you see now why I couldn't fix my room. Now, I already have the drive. I want to build a house that is housing. And oh, look, I have ruler of the fourth in the second. Second is house of skill. Eris is the I am. So I am building my house and then taking a look at all these topics that are defending the airspace. Well, wars happen because people raped. So we need to create a culture that is not rapey, not in spirit, not in matter. Only then there can be what? Housing. We cannot abolish rape if we blame the people that were raped, right? And then people begin to think about euthanasia and they say, wait a second. They say nature in pre-industrial society, there wasn't access to, let's say, maybe there were herbs or something, but there wasn't access to something that was facilitating a smooth transition to death. Although it should be the same herbs that are used for birthing, because it's the transition in and out of life. But this is because the transitions for in societies not rapey are smooth, are orgasmic birthing. And then industrial society claimed to have solved the medicine and make people live longer. But the quality of life wasn't necessarily raising, it was more dependent on women's rights than the other factors. Namely, to enjoy the advances of technology, we need to honor the rights of the children, the rights of the women, the rights of the people we're in conflict with. Now, if people do that, but only amongst their class, like with what happens, I cannot say it happens with the elite even, then what happens? They get inflamed. We have grand plagues and so on. Um, and then come the parents and say, "Oh, you've been fixing your home for an entire day. What are you, Sophocles?" I say, "Well, actually, in Grecian land, they weren't really honoring women. Because of that, they had all kinds of traditions like the Spartans. Everything had to be telic, and the goddess of fertility became the goddess of the hunt and the goddess that protected women from being raped and the children. So also the lore of the most sacred things to Western society was like they were a little bit, it is the Middle East. They were dark skinned. Yeah, they were not like espresso, but mocha. But they were not white. The pillars of Western civilization were not white. Um, Now, to which, of course, you should answer to me, surely there's no such thing as white. They are all red. A little bit of sunshine, and they become red. Um, Now, everybody wants to see progress. And then other people say, well, if I don't study, then it will be. I had, when I was 19, I went to academia, and then there was a girl next to me, and she had a song that says, either we go up and study or up in the street and sell the body. What they didn't prepare was the Epstein infiltration and the human trafficking in academia. For me, I wanted to study regardless, but I didn't know that there is trafficking in academia at that age. Now, sexual boundary violation also can cause, to some people, it can cause dyslexia. And so people that have lower grades are indoctrinated to blackmail their teachers for grades. Or it can cause people to focus on the intellectual and not date, let's say, people. And then when people try to have any interaction of them that is, then they're like me, they say, well, I need my freedom, thank you. No. And they try to circumvent around that. No, that's not the type of sexuality that I want. No, thank you. Uranus in Cancer is also going through the things in the nation and the people that need to be let's say, Uranus is the Kundalini rise. What in the nation, in the family unit, but also in the nation, in the people, intervenes with Kundalini rise? There are people that brought children to the world not really being sexual people. Women that were mothers and not really. And the perceptions on the erotic at the absence of the embodied are more easily skewed. This is how a person that was themselves raped could find themselves saying, oh, for these young women, sluts that want to climb up the ladder, write it. And when would we hear that people say that? That around the Me Too, why it sparks stuff. And some respond as, yes, certain things that I thought were a compliment were not really. They were not. I was not really feeling. Now, what is that? Is a result of the fact that people weren't in the embodied. If a society can even think that there is such a thing as, let's say, sex worker or slut or whore or prostitute or whatever they call it, it means that nobody in that society has ever had, bless you, an embodied orgasm. Yeah, yeah. לא, זה במטבח. דקה. דקה. לא. במטבח כנראה. Now, speaking about Uranus in the moon, and the kitchen is revolting. את שואלת אותי כשאני בחדר מה קרה? Here it is. תבנית נפלה. מה? תבנית נפלה. Nothing much. לא ידעתי. תכף אני אקח לי. So, now you say, who is the infantile that note that? The infants. Recording. As now it makes sense, because if the men are going to rape children for money, how will the women? It doesn't work together. And then they try to have gender wars. The men try to say, oh, we don't need women. The women try to say, oh, we don't need men. But nobody understands we don't need the rites of passage that are ritual abuse at every level, particularly the more higher up the rank, which is what is expected to be man, is to be provider. But to be provider, he has to network, and network is Rolodex, Detru, Epstein. Then he comes back home to what? Somebody wouldn't. Then he tries from the ego to show that he can also be that, or he can also be that. It's not about he can also be, it's about, okay, be consistent. Drop the cult, drop the Peter ring. people can do genocide, but they cannot stop the ritual abuse that's happening in their cities. But oh, the tribal, because Moon is also the tribal. Uranus is not going to, it's so lovely because Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. And then Uranus in Cancer is not going to allow people to be satisfied with the tribe. Now, this is normal if you think about Eris, entire Uranus Eris. My boundaries should be expanded. Uranus in Taurus. There is this course that said that we can talk to our yonis. To see then you talk to your yoni for 7 years, and then it's like, well, it's an infant. We are in the infant phase. Oh, and I was trying to get um embodied and connected where I was somewhat self-violating, yes, even with the best of communication. Yeah, I have Karen and Gemini. Now, Cancer is also a water sign. Saturn will already be in the opening synodic cycle with Uranus because it's going to conjoin Uranus in Gemini at around 2030. Now, this is where it's going to be fascinating because Saturn Uranus conjunction in the sign of cities is going to open a whole new trajectory about the structure of cities. But it's also going to be with Ketu. And then Saturn is going to go into Cancer first. And it's going to give us a reality check on all things Cancer, including Cancer itself. People can both die from Cancer, but also kill Cancer with Saturn in Cancer. We see all the popping up remediation. What's the popping up remediation? Summer wormwood. Oh, but the dosage, yeah, probably better prepared, fresh, and continuously drank as preventative, but also compounded by extraction of powder that is in an extraction form. Okay, people grow the plant themselves. They have to care for the soil, but it's probably going to look better than the industrial one. 26 genes involved with cancers, like the 26 ways in which sexual boundary violation manifests as inflammation in the human brain that chronically affects the rewriting of or the epigenetics of. I said, but that's in the genes. Yeah, genes are fucked up as humanity. It's okay. The epigenetics. You talk about children raped as infants, trafficked, tortured, to fear to even speak, that being presented as sex work as the most ancient profession. And you want a society that has normal genes. And then the answer always, oh, but in Afghanistan, oh, but in that, and then 2 years later they try to make it like Afghanistan. And everybody big mad over nothing. Do you know how much they pay to decide the gender of the fetus? Now changing the culture to support life becomes presented as a genocidal in a business. Oh, people are going to need jobs. No, they're going to need land, they're going to need housing, they're going to need rest, they're going to need care that is actually care, not control. That's the crisis. None of the other things are going to work anyway until people will no longer be able to say, "Oh, you're not going to change the world." Well, the world is changing tremendously. There's no excuse for those things not to be. More Uranus cancer. Food. The GMOs. If I think about my parents, they grew up in where everything was fruit trees upon fruit trees, the food forests. But the behavior of the people was not honoring the feminine. And then everything became buildings, 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 buildings. And so the ability to have food changed in the value of the assets. By the way, the building of my grandparents is still standing. When I was younger than high school, they were thinking to do an evacuation and rebuilding in that particular street. Now, except for the Gulf War, where there was a street, two streets there that were bombed, so they built new housing. Um, then, of course, people say that in Tel Aviv they didn't know what is war, where the entire Intifada happened there. It says State Tel Aviv, or Ramat Gan, or whatnot. They say, well, there is air pollution, yes, but other than that, more urine cancer. Is it cancer, fertility, housing, food, the moon itself? And the notion that it squares from Eris, because in Eris we speak about tolerance, and then in Cancer we have to actually live with those people and tolerate them. In Eris we ask what are the limits to the tolerance, and those limits should be something to do with not being tolerant towards child violation. Um, in Cancer we would have expected to be after the workers' revolution. So the expectation that our workplace should be funding for our housing, and that we will be able to grow a family in that housing. And that even if we have disability, we will be able to be receiving care in our housing. To the people that say, oh, we just can't afford for housing, housing is not on the menu, it's like, look at Uranus. Less than a decade from now, the companies that have prepared themselves to provide for housing that is actually housing, independent of ability to work, and for the people to receive their care at the housing, not as infiltrating, not as controlling, but as accessible. Twice I can think about the situation. First of all, my grandmother, she stayed at home. When she became sick, she was a working woman, but worked at the factory and so on. But when she was sick, she stayed home. They brought the hospital